We stay with the devastating floods in KwaZulu-Natal having affected business activity. That's with the news coming in that Standard Bank has closed 34 branches. MTN, on the other hand, has said that its network connectivity is interrupted and over 500 of their sites have been affected by the overnight flooding that caused power outages. At the same time, Transnet has had to suspend operations in and around the Durban ports. That's due to that bad weather. Managing Executive at Transnet, Moshe Mutlohi, speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time, Moshe. Let's start with the Durban port being suspending operations. This is the biggest entry port for trade in South Africa. What is the enormity of the impact of these developments?
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Look, yesterday when we had the storms hitting us, we really had to think of three things that were impacting us. One was safety of our employees, infrastructure, and the superstructure in the port. It was obvious that it would be impossible to proceed operating under the circumstances that we were faced with yesterday. So we had to suspend operations for that. Secondly, there was also an element of power outage, as you have mentioned, which meant that some of the heavy lifting equipment that the port is using were not being charged by power because of the power disruptions that had arisen out of the waterlogging of the substations themselves. The third one was that the infrastructure was disrupted heavily in and around Durban and in the port, where our employees either could not leave work or come to the port. Based on those three considerations, we decided to suspend the operations, but we did not only suspend and did nothing. We then embarked on a program that is well thought. One was to stabilize the environment. We convened a meeting of all the port users, that is those who run terminal operations in the port, and Transnet ODs or operating divisions that are outside of the port. We brought in South African Police and Metro Police, where we looked at the impact of what was happening to the port and how the port can assist in alleviating the problem itself. We have then identified areas that were of concern, which was the safety of our employees broadly now, not only Transnet, but employees in the port. We attended to their flight first, making sure that they were taken to safety. Those who had no food were given food. Secondly, the second step, now having done that, was to do the real inspection of the infrastructure around the port. We have seen that major roads leading to the port have been damaged, and therefore it means that it's going to be risky to have heavy vehicles moving up and down those roads up until we've stabilized them. We put a team together that is working on doing the stabilization of the road. We have given them 48 hours to finish that kind of work. We then have identified a few things that we must then do when we resume operation. One was to make sure that the port is safe for operation. In the port, with everything else being pushed by the streams to the port, it then becomes important that we get sounding done. Sounding is an activity where we get our divers to go and inspect if there are no obstacles hidden in our channel that can harm the ships. So we're doing that. Parallel to it will then be starting with the reloading of the ships that are in the port, also processing the trucks that were trapped in the port so that we can release them. We are going to prioritize foodstuff, fuel, and medicines.
It's encouraging to hear the letter there, especially around fuel and food, but is it too early to ask about the projected losses at this time?
Yes, no, it is still too early to have that detail of understanding of what has happened.
Going forward, though, Moshe, we must also talk about whether there are elements or maybe measures in place to ensure that this type of natural disaster, there are mitigating measures that are put in place.
Definitely, it's something that we constantly work on. Mother Nature will throw things at us, but we've got ways of responding. First, to say we work with the weather service to understand what are the weather patterns. And every time when we pick up signals, we begin to secure the port to make sure that what is in the port is secured, at least either by pinning it down, making sure that you don't have unnecessary movements. We also mobilize our employees who have to be in the port in case the ships start getting disturbed, where you can have our tugs pushing them and securing them. Firefighters are always on standby. There are things that we can do. There are things that we just have to make sure that we take care of everyone around us to make sure that they don't get impacted negatively. But from a board point of view, we also, with the municipality, are working towards having a second access road to the Port of Durban. That road is going to alleviate some of the problems, like this case where we've got a sinkhole developing in one of the major roads into the Port Bayhead Road. If we had already finished the second access road, that would work as a valve. Right now, we have to make other means to avert the situation.
We'll have to leave it there for now with Transnet and take a final look at the day's market activity before you get the latest sport.